Hello, Bucs fans, and welcome to Hear the Cannons. This is our instant reaction. Unfortunately, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, after what was one of arguably Todd Bowles' best victory as a head coach of the Buccaneers, he follows it up with maybe his worst. The Buccaneers lose 26-7 to the Bo Nix-led Denver Broncos at Raymond James Stadium. This is real. This just happened. Vibes are probably pretty low. I am joined by Caleb Skinner, staff writer for BucsGameday, which is Sports Illustrated's only website dedicated specifically to covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Caleb, you were there at Raymond James. Tell us a little bit about the vibes in the stadium, first of all. Like, was there any moment of optimism from the crowd, or what was the vibes like?
It was kind of hard to hear you there, Colin. But I'm assuming if there's any areas to be optimistic, is that where you're going? If so, I guess kind of the areas of optimism you could look at was Bucky Irving running between the tackles, getting the running game going a little bit. Rashad White wasn't able to find much today, so Bucky kind of picked up. You saw the explosive plays, the reason why the Buccaneers drafted him to begin with, but. Outside of that, it's really hard to have much optimism, coming out of a game like this when you're facing a rookie quarterback who hasn't proven anything yet in this league. And through two games, you let him dice you up and dot balls all over the field on rollout passes is pretty tough. But I'll let you continue and feed us into some different talking points here from the Bucs 26-7 loss.
Yeah, I got something positive for Bucs fans, and that is the New Orleans Saints just blew a late lead to the Philadelphia Eagles. So if you're looking for some sort of silver lining, Bucs fans, it is the fact that the New Orleans Saints also lost against the Eagles, who the Bucs will be playing next week. Caleb, I want to talk. You brought up a good point about the running game. I mean, it wasn't even close. Bucky Irving absolutely he averaged almost 8 yards a carry. Rashad White was under 3. Bucky actually got more carries than Rashad White in this game for the first time all year. Do you expect that trend to continue moving forward?
I'm not sure if it'll continue moving forward. Like you mentioned, Rashad only carried the ball 6 times, and all of those carries were in the first half, and he didn't get another carry the whole second half. It was all Bucky Irving from there on out. Besides, I think Rashad had maybe 2 catches out of the backfield here in the second half. So I don't know if it's something that's going to necessarily be something moving forward. I still think they want to use Rashad in certain instances, but one thing is for certain here is that Bucky does look more comfortable and more well-rounded when he is running between the tackles and those run plays compared to what White is able to get on some similar instances.
For sure. And I mean, the fact is, though, not only was the run game non-existent, aside from like that one big run for Bucky Irving was big, but the passing game was just terrible today, and that's been a strength for this offense so far. Was it more a matter, because it's hard to tell from the TV view? I wasn't down there. Was it more a matter of receivers not getting open downfield, or was the O line not giving Baker enough time to find them? What was a bigger issue, but the O line or receiver work?
I think it's kind of a combination of a lot. It's not necessarily on the receivers. The receivers were getting open. Baker just didn't have the time to be able to look down the field. And by the time he was trying to get rid of the ball, they were. I mean, early on in the game, they recovered pretty well. You saw Baker try and take off with it a couple of times, keep his head downfield. But once those sacks started piling up, you saw Baker kind of take his eyes from downfield, try and run with it a little bit more, which also didn't work. But I think primarily you can put the struggles in the passing game today on the offensive line. I know Cody Mauch had a really, really bad game today, trying to block there and pass protection. And obviously, we know with Luke being out that Skule was going to get that starting spot. And he didn't obviously give up what we were seeing last week to Hutch. But, that whole side was struggling. And I think a large part of that is the absence of Gadecki, not just because of how good he is as a right tackle, but also for the demeanor that he brings to that offensive line. He also helps out with Cody on that right side of the offensive line. So Cody's mistakes, when they do happen, aren't necessarily as glaring as they have been in today's game. So I personally would put the problems from today in the passing game on the offensive line. They allowed, I think, either 7 or 8 sacks today on Baker Mayfield, which just cannot happen if you want to win the game. It kills all of your consistency, any balance that you have moving the ball as well. So it just overall just did not look good.
Yeah, and we got some people watching on YouTube who agree. We have one Lucas Pettis. Thanks for checking us out on YouTube. Says they really need to think about letting Klein start over Cody. It's an interesting suggestion for sure. I don't think they're going to give up on Cody Mo this quick, but we got a few comments that would echo those same sentiments. As you can see here from Sal 319, Cody Milk had a rough day today. Absolutely. I mean, when you notice him more than you do Justin School, that tells you all you need to know. Okay, what about Liam Cohen? Because it's hard to come away from this game with much good to say about what he did, because it's not always just about the game plan you have coming in. It's about adjusting on the fly, and it's
Yeah.
hard for us to tell from our vantage point. But like, is Liam Cohen more to blame for this, for not adjusting? Is it on Baker, or is it still all coming back to that offensive line, Caleb?
I think the game plan was probably pretty set. Denver doesn't do anything necessarily super special on that side of the ball. They do love to blitz and they do love to play man-to-man coverage. So, I mean, it's not anything different that you're going up against. Yeah, you've got who's there? The defensive coordinator there for Denver is a great defensive coordinator. Is able to
Vance Joseph.
Vance Joseph was able to scheme things up, well against the Bucs today. So I don't know if it's necessarily on Liam. I do think they want to get a little bit more creative. And I think the biggest thing missing out of this game plan, right, is you want to get Mike Evans involved early. And when Mike Evans isn't getting involved in the game, you can see how it can kind of slow down, become kind of junky. You're always relying on, a Chris Godwin third down or something like that when things aren't getting to Mike, because Mike opens things up, but at the same time, and you have to get that running game going, and not being able to have a balanced attack like that just limits all. It kind of takes away from that game plan or scheme that you had coming into the game, and now you're just trying to make those adjustments on the fly instead of being able to do it maybe at halftime. You're trying to make these adjustments as you go throughout the game, and if those continue not to work, then you're kind of just fiddling with sticks, trying to see which square fits into the circle hole, and it just wasn't happening today. And no reset. Get ready to go for next week in another big game. But I think the portion of the game where maybe the adjustments needed to be made where they weren't is on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that for a little bit. I mean, the Bucs. So the trench play on both sides was absolutely embarrassing today for the Bucs, and I don't want to hear a thing about the injuries either. I get it. Bucs are missing three of their best players, but on that side of the ball, in Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, and Antoine Winfield Jr. But you know what? They didn't have those guys against the Detroit Lions in Detroit last week, and to me, this feels like a team that wasn't adequately prepared, and they overlooked their opponent. And they need to look themselves in the mirror. Now, without those two guys on the interior, talking Vea and Kancey, the Bucs D-line couldn't generate any form of pressure on Bo Nix. They had 0 sacks and just 2 QB hits, 2 quarterback hits. Denver had 7 sacks and 9 quarterback hits. I mean, why are they not able to get to a guy like Bo Nix? This is not considered to be a strong offensive line. Whether or not Kancey and Vea are in there, does this show us the edge rushing talent on this team is even worse than we thought when they're not getting the push from inside?
I mean, yeah, when they're being relied upon as the single kind of guys to be able to create pressure, when you are missing your forces up the middle, it becomes an issue, right? Because they already aren't the strongest of edge rushing teams. We know that. We knew that coming into the season. We knew that all offseason they were going to need help there. And they tried to improve that area. But, a guy like Chris Braswell still coming along, still trying to find his footing in the NFL. And, trying to make do with JTS and some of the other guys out there on the edge. And, JTS is kind of like Yaya. They're getting those pressures, but nothing. They can't finish the play, and that's been the biggest thing that you could harp on when it comes to the line. But I think with Vea back and Kancey, that defensive line just changes a whole dynamic, because their offensive line production and offensive line attention is always going to be on those two guys, your big names up the middle. So it allows for that edge rush to get there a little bit quicker, which if you were there, if there probably could have been 2 or 3 sacks today if they were there just had hair of a split second earlier. But that didn't happen, and that's unfortunate. But as a team, you can't put the onus on one particular part of the defense. I just think as a whole they didn't adjust. When you know that Denver likes to run the ball, when you know they like to get Bo Nix out in rollout situations to get him outside of the pocket to be able to throw downfield, and they did it all game to you. They did it all game to you when you knew coming into the game that that was their MO. That's what they go by. And not only did you fail to stop it to begin with, you couldn't make the adjustments throughout the game to stop it either. And so it's just dump offs all day and rollouts for Bo Nix, which he has proven up to this point. Well, obviously that's all gone now, but up through his first two games, hadn't proven anything. 0 touchdowns through the air with 4 picks, turning the ball over a lot. So yeah, it's concerning to see that a Todd Bowles just getting so much praise for perhaps his best coach game in his career as the Buccaneers head coach, and then you follow it up with perhaps maybe the worst, like you mentioned to begin the show. So
Yeah, and you'd think like if the team is struggling to generate pressures on Bo Nix, you'd think they could at least have sold out to stop the run. That's something that Todd Bowles has prioritized as a DC, and it's something that over the last several years the Bucs have been near the top of the league in. I get it, Vea's not in there, that's a big factor, but the Bucs lost every phase of this game, and defending the run was one of them. And it looked like I'd love to see the numbers on missed tackles when they come out in some of these PFF grades, because there were a ton of missed tackles.
yep.
And not only that, of the top 7 tacklers for the Bucs, 5 of them were defensive backs. So the D line is not only not getting to the quarterback, they're not making tackles either. And I don't know what you like. What is the problem there? Like, is this just a one off, or is this something Bucs fans should be really concerned about?
It can be concerning. It's worrisome that it's the Denver Broncos that were able to do it to you, right? Like, you could have gone up against any other team with a lot of weapons. I mean, shoot, you could have faced the Detroit Lions, and you would have played like today, and they kind of put up 40 or 50 burger on you. So that part is concerning. But we have seen this team play up and down the competition. That's kind of what they're gonna do. And until everybody's healthy, I don't think you can get a full read on this Buccaneers team. But I just don't think they found themselves in advantageous positions today. I don't think the coaching staff put them in advantageous positions for them to be able to come up with some of these plays that should have been made. And I mean, it all comes back to that. Not everybody is going to make every single play. We understand that, right? But being in the right spots to be able to make these tackles, it felt like the Denver Broncos, every time a player caught the ball, were just ping ponging off of guys, right? And maybe that's because you weren't in the right position, or maybe you're just not form tackling, or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, that all comes back to coaching, right? You need to be doing these things in practice to where you're going through how you would in a game. And clearly, there's kind of something missing in all facets. I mean, there's something you can nitpick from each thing. I think the secondary didn't have a great day. Few hands on balls, but didn't necessarily create any turnovers. We're close on some, but Jamel Dean was getting picked on all day as your starting lockdown cornerback. So that was not a great sight, in my opinion, with seeing him not be able to step up when the team really needed him. So there's just a lot overall from this game that is negative, and I'm sure Todd Bowles and the rest of the staff and the players as well are ready to kind of put this one behind them and move forward and look ahead to a big matchup coming up this next week that the Buccaneers will likely need now with the Saints losing, and then seeing what ends up happening with the Atlanta Falcons tonight against the Chiefs.
Yeah, and the Buccaneers will be facing off against the Philadelphia Eagles next week. That is the team that just took down the Saints. It's going to be a significantly tougher matchup. The Eagles are a little banged up as well. They lost Devonta Smith, Lane Johnson, a couple other big players in this game, but so are the Bucs, right? And if you can't get by the Broncos, I mean, you got to look yourself in the mirror long and hard. But we will save that for Wednesday. Wednesday, we are going to tee up next week's game versus the Eagles. I just want to know before we get out of here whether or not you have any final thoughts on this game, Caleb, that you wanna mention.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to, come into this or whatever, and they're not going to look ahead. They're kind of gonna. This isn't a trap game for the Bucs. They should be able to handle business despite what they're down. We all picked the Buccaneers to win in a blowout, and it completely was the opposite, right? It was a complete 180 from what we all thought. And so, looking forward, I think you're going to get some guys back healthy next week, which will be good. So it's good to look forward to. But being able to get on the same page, make sure you're coming into this with a business approach. Like, any given Sunday, an NFL team can win, right? So you have to understand that going in, you can't just sleepwalk into a 1 o'clock game against the Denver Broncos thinking that it's going to be a cakewalk. You have to come in prepared. And if the Buccaneers don't get prepared, moving forward, then that can become, a bigger issue and continue to snowball for the rest of the season. I don't think that's going to be the case, and I think they'll get things figured out. But overall today, it was just not good, and it's one of those days where you just kind of want to watch the film one time, throw the rest of it away, start paying attention to next week.
Time to flush it. Time to flush it quick and move on. For sure. I agree with you, man. That's good, mature, rational thinking by you, Mr. Skinner.
Trying to be.
Yeah. So for everyone who's watching on YouTube, thanks for jumping in here. And don't forget, we're going to be doing a mailbag column this week. So if you have questions you want answered, we're going to send out a couple tweets or just tweet it at BucsGameday on Twitter. And we will get to that in a mailbag article. And we're going to have a ton of content coming out today, tomorrow, the next day, and the day after that, because that's what we do at BucsGameday. Again, Sports Illustrated's only website that's just strictly 24/7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And yeah, so hopefully we'll find some positives here. I'm really curious to hear what our guys get out of the coaches and whoever takes whatever kind of interviews they get, because there's going to be a lot of interesting sound bites coming out of that locker room and that press conference. So maybe I did you a favor pulling you out of there, Caleb, so you don't have to get sass.
Yeah, you might have. Usually after losses, the locker room isn't quite as fun, and there's usually a lot less guys in there. So, yeah, I think you might have bailed me out of one call, and I appreciate it.
Happy birthday, man. That's it. That's my birthday gift to you. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thanks for joining us. Make sure you set your alarms for Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, because we'll have a bigger crew there and we'll have had some time, and we're really going to focus on the matchups and some of the things we'll be looking for versus the Philadelphia Eagles next week. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to the Bucs Game Day YouTube channel and check out BucsGameday.com. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Be well. Go Bucs.